Hello everybody, it's Mrs. Bennett-Morgenstern and I'm going to show you how to construct and create the Notan Design using black construction paper on a white background. Some of you have already gotten a hold of me about doing it the opposite way. I don't see why not. Just make sure that it is a high contrast color combination with something that's really light with something that's really dark. The supplies are available in the office, and obviously you wouldn't be making a piece that is as big as this example or with the students that are working in the classroom here, but you definitely will have the supplies that you need. As far as supplies, we have some black construction paper. We have a larger white square of paper, Elmer's glue, and a pretty decent pair of scissors. First thing I want to talk about is the construction paper. Black construction paper has a tendency to come in like two different colors. So I don't know if you can see this in the video, but the two pieces of construction paper that I have here are distinctly different. Sometimes the two sides of the same construction paper can be different. Yeah, this looks a little different. If you were here in the classroom, you could definitely see that. You may be able to see it in the video. So I'm going to put that to the side because it's in my way. And just a reminder that we are working on a square piece of paper. So the background paper will be square. And in the case of anything that you have at home, usually it's 8.5 by 11 copy paper or a 9 by 12 piece of drawing paper. You just want to make sure that the background is square. The piece of paper that you're cutting the design out of, not only should it be different in contrast, it should also be substantially smaller, so everything that you cut out, you have space to glue it down around the edges. We will be working from all four sides. I had mentioned earlier that your design can be symmetrical, it can be asymmetrical, but the most important thing that it has to show is reflection. And during one of our last meetings, I pointed out some of the mistakes of the examples that I showed you in the presentation where the reflection wasn't correct. So keep that in mind. Hopefully, if you follow through on the instructions here, you won't make any mistakes. I also have a pair of really good scissors. These are mine. I usually use Fiskars scissors in the classroom, but because I had to buy so many this year, the scissors that I gave you in your packages of supplies are brand new, so they should work really well, and they're yours, so they're not gonna get wrecked quickly by everybody using them. Okay, I'm actually going to move this white paper out of the way to do this because I don't want it to get dirty. And I'm going to check out and see what side of the paper is darker. And to save time, I've actually done a design on the more dark side. And I don't know, yep, I guess you can kind of see where the pencil lines are. It's a really good idea to use pencil to draw the design first. However, erasing on construction paper can cause the dye, the color to come up. So just remember to always work from the same side. Don't draw, cut, and then go to the other side. Draw it all out first. That way you'll know that you're using the same side all the time. That's really important for consistency of color when we glue it onto the white paper. Okay, so a little bit about cutting. Scissors don't cut by chopping. They will, but it's actually the slicing motion along the scissor blade that causes the paper to be cut, okay? So working slowly is a better idea than trying to chop this all out really quick. Now, this is gonna be a little time consuming for me, and I apologize if this is pretty boring, but I just want to get this done fully so you can see what I mean about using 80% of the paper. And I'm not going to go crazy on the reflection part of this design for time purposes. That's something that you can ask me for help with when you're working on it, either at home or in class during our live sessions. So I'm really trying to be as careful as I can and as quick as I can. And I'm going to carefully make sure that I save the pieces to the side, even if it's a little tiny piece that I cut out. I move the paper most of the time rather than my scissors. I'm not turning my arm in an odd direction. I'm turning the paper. Because once you start turning your arm in odd directions, you don't cut as well. That's a big mistake that I see students making quite a bit. Not your fault. The way school is now, you don't get a lot of experience cutting and gluing like we used to back in the day when I was a kid. Trying to keep my motions very smooth and fluid. It's perfectly okay if the pencil is showing, because I'm not going to use this side of the paper when I put it down, when I glue it down. Okay. I've preserved the corners on this piece of black paper. That way, it's easier for me to handle the gluing part of the design, and it's not flopping around and all the edges are difficult to line up. Remember when I pointed out during the other presentation the other day that you can still see, your brain will fill in and you can still see the outline of the original black square. Okay, almost done. This is where having a shelf or a folder or even an envelope can come in handy, because if you're using some really small pieces, you don't want to lose anything. So if you've got like just a letter envelope at home, you can use that to store your pieces in. This project really doesn't take long. It only takes long if you're trying to be really super careful with the cutting. And you should, because you want to have very good craftsmanship. So the slower you go, the better it's going to come out as far as cutting. And I have a couple little weird edges here and there. So I have 4 pieces cut out, and what I'm left with is the leftover. This is called the negative space. All the pieces that I cut out are the positive space. I'm gonna go more into that in future projects, but I've used 80% of the black paper, okay? Probably, maybe even a little less. So it's kind of, you know, I have an equal amount of black paper left over. Okay, we'll put that to the side and get our white paper back underneath here. And of course, this is a large piece of paper. Many of you are going to be working a lot smaller. I do recommend that you practice this design first. Some of the students in class have already started doing that. You can use scrap paper. You don't necessarily have to use black and white. I mentioned before that it was okay to have the pencil marks on here. And it is, because I'm going to actually flip this over. Now you can see, because the corners are intact, it's not flopping around a lot. Some of the designs that I showed you the other day were really a lot more complicated, and some of the corners were cut right to the edges, or the corners were cut off. I kind of would avoid doing that unless you practice a lot. So I want to try to make sure that this design is kind of in the middle as much as possible. Don't measure. You don't want to get any kind of pencil lines or any gluey mess on the white part, because you want this to stay high contrast. So when we use glue, we only need to use a couple of dots at a time. This is the straightforward Elmer's glue wall. It's not like the school glue. This is a lot stronger. So I'm actually going to make sure that I flip this over, put the glue in a few spots, just right in the middle. just a couple of dots here and there. And I'm going to kind of place this in the middle, eyeballing it, not measuring. Going to put that down. You don't want a lot of glue. The reason is with construction paper, the dye is not very well blended in with the paper pulp. And if you have too much glue on your fingers as you're trying to smooth it out, or the glue oozes out from underneath, your finger is going to start smudging it, and the dye from the paper is going to start getting all over your white paper and make smudges. It's pretty frustrating when you're trying to do a nice clean design. So only use as much glue as you need to stick the paper to the white paper. I'm now going to take my cutouts and I'm going to make sure that they're fit like a puzzle back into my square. Okay? By doing this, this is going to help with reflection. Okay? You won't make a mistake if you fit all your pieces back into, because it's easier to figure out how to do the reflection. So I'm going to just take the first piece, kind of lift it out a little bit, and I'm just going to put a dot of glue in the center where the most black is, and I'm going to flip it over. Okay, that way it's a perfect reflection of itself. Okay, go to the next one. And then flip that. You want to line it up as best you can. I did that wrong. Oh, made a mistake. That looks like a bat. Okay. Now, this is not secure. So you don't want to pick it up because it's doesn't have a lot of glue on it yet. So it's a pretty cool design. I like how it looks in the center here now that you can see that the old square, square from the middle, it's back together again. Closure. Your brain fills in what's missing. So this black piece now becomes the edge rather than the actual paper itself, the original square itself. It's kind of confusing, but you'll get used to it once you start doing it. So I have a pretty basic design here. It's not overly complicated, okay? What you would do next, if you're satisfied, it's already started to be glue. Now you're going to take the glue bottle and start gluing down the edges. Again, you don't want to put gobs and gobs of glue on everything because you don't want it to ooze out onto the white paper. You'll get very, very frustrated. So this could be a little time consuming, and I'm not going to sit here and do the whole thing. I'm just doing it enough so when I lift it up, it's not going to flop all over the place. But you definitely want to glue down every single edge that looks like it's sticking up on everything. And again, great to have these little glue bottles. If you have a big glue bottle at home that you're using, I highly recommend that you take a scrap piece of paper and put glue on the paper and then take a Q-tip to use to put the glue on, or even the end of a paper clip, okay? Rather than your finger, because you don't want to get any of this black construction paper dye on the white paper. Okay, so it is difficult if you do it the way that I say. No, if you follow the instructions here, you're less likely to make a mistake with the reflection, okay? And you're less likely to make a mistake with the gluing. Some of the issues that can happen here's one that I showed you the other day. Okay, some of the issues that can happen is when you start cutting smaller and smaller pieces, okay, if your hands have glue all over them, you're gonna start wrecking these because they're thin, they're fragile. And you get more respect in Japan the more complicated your design, but you also get respect for how well it's constructed, how clean it is, how well it's cut, how well it's glued, okay? So I don't want you to panic if your design is really, really simple. I definitely could have done a better job cutting this even though it's a pretty simple design. I see some little fuzzy things sticking up right here. I see some little choppy marks right here. It's because I was going quickly for the purposes of the demonstration. So, practice. It's not that difficult to get this together and get it finished. Make sure that you glue down the center part first, okay? Make sure that you fit your pieces back in like a puzzle and that it's from the same side of the paper. It won't fit otherwise. That way, when you do the reflection, it will work perfectly. And if you like to make more than one and try to get a little more challenging with the second one, go for it. But please only submit one for a grade, okay? This project is going to be due on October 8th, 2020, because it's not that difficult a project to do. So again, if you need your supplies, you need to come in and pick them up. And that's it for today.